When you solo, do you ever feel like you're just playing the same things again and again? Like you're just playing repetitive stuff, boring phrases, and that you can't come up with anything new, that you're stuck? This right here might be the last pentatonic lesson you'll ever need. Maybe even the last lesson you'll need when it comes to scales overall. I know that that's a pretty bold claim, but just give me a couple minutes and I'll see what I can do for you. My goal here is to make your solos way more melodic, expressive, and exciting. My name is Christian Lee. I'm a Norwegian with over a decade of experience from sales, different sales and service jobs. And for the past 15 years, I've been playing the guitar, both as a hobby and now as a career, because I very recently became a teacher. In the old days, a beginner guitarist would start learning the fretboard by memorizing the pentatonic shapes, maybe even the cage system. That's not exactly how you need to do it now, because now we know a little bit better. Instead of a melody, play scale, fucking plane coming, we just gotta wait. The stack and the rectangle are two shapes that we find in all the pentatonic shapes. If we compare one of the pentatonic shapes with a sentence that you read in a book, the stack and the rectangle would be the first and the last part of that sentence. They're smaller building blocks that we can use to navigate all over the neck. But before we talk more about those, we need to have a look at something called the warp. This is the tuning shift that happens between the G and the B string. You see, all the strings on the guitar are tuned with a 5 fret distance between each other in terms of the tone, except for one string, and that's the B. Here we find a 4 fret distance. Count 5 steps up on the E string, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that should be, if your guitar is tuned correctly, the same note as the adjacent string below it. And if we do the same thing with the next string, the A string, we count 5 frets up. When we play the open string next to it, it should be the same. Same with the D and the G, but when we come to the G and the B, you can hear that that's not the rule anymore. If this wasn't the case, if we had a guitar where all the strings had 5 frets of a distance between each other from the lower E string to the upper E string, then the pentatonic shapes would look a lot more symmetrical. But that's not the case because of the standard tuning that the guitar is tuned to. And because of that, it looks on the surface like we have to memorize just a ton of shapes, 5 pentatonic boxes, right? But in order to improvise with confidence, you really don't need to learn that much. Whenever a sequence of notes, let's say it's a chord or a pentatonic box, for example, whenever that set of notes passes over the warp, we get something called a deformation. In this case, as you can see on the screen, this is a deformed stack. The notes shift 1 fret down the fretboard. Every chord, every triad, every scale follow this rule of the warp. Same goes for this rectangle as well, as you can see. Once we move it from the G to the B, we have to shift the upper notes 1 fret down, and so it becomes a parallelogram. You can see that the stack has 2 different deformations, while the rectangle has 1. Here are a few examples of popular rock licks that use mostly the stack and the rectangle shapes. Knowing how the stack and the rectangle is used in popular songs is one really important step in order to memorize them. It can really help you with that. But another way to memorize them is simply knowing how they show up on the neck. In other words, having a clear mental image of what they look like. Let's say we have a grid of infinite strings, and all these strings are tuned with a 5-fret distance from one to the other. If that's the case, we get this pattern. As you can see, the stack and the rectangle alternate one after another. If we adapt this to the normal guitar neck with the standard tuning, we have to shift the 2 upper strings 1 step to the right. And as you can see, that's how we get the first pentatonic shape. If you shift up this pattern 1 string, we get shape number 4. Then we do it again and we get shape number 2. Then we get 5, and then we get 3. So that's how we arrive at these 5 different pentatonic shapes. And as you can see, they're all made up of just a rectangle in the stack. If you want to switch from major to the minor pentatonic or vice versa, you can just use the exact same shapes. The only difference is that you have to switch out the root notes. So the root note will be placed at different places inside of those shapes. You can go ahead and learn the entire cage method. You can memorize the triads, the arpeggios, all the pentatonic boxes, so on and so forth, and that will help you. Or you could do the more efficient way, which is to memorize where the root note is inside of the stack and the rectangle. I know that I definitely didn't do that when I started out because I didn't know about this from when I started. But if I was to start again, this is what I would do. In the rectangle, the minor pentatonic root is on the lower note on the upper string. If we look at the stack, the minor pentatonic root appears as the upper note on the middle string. The major pentatonic root is on the upper note on the upper string of the rectangle, and on the stack we find it as the lower note on the upper string. Sometimes when I have students that want to learn to have more freedom, have more confidence when they improvise or just come up with licks on the spot, I often recommend to memorize this super shape. This shape is, as you can see, a lot of notes. It's all the pentatonic boxes and shapes connected together into one whole piece. Then what you can do is you can slice it in half, so you can focus on just the 3 upper strings, the G, the B, and the E strings, because then you don't have to memorize all the root notes at once. You can just take a few of them. And now we can look at the individual stacks and rectangles here. So from left to right, we find a rectangle. Then there's a second deformed stack here, a deformed rectangle. Then we see the upper 2 strings of the first deformed stack and the lower 2 strings of a stack. There are a few half shapes here of the stack and the rectangle as well that we didn't mention, but these are just a few ones that you can see and visualize immediately. And here you can see the major pentatonic root notes, and these are the minor pentatonic root notes. I thought I'd also show you a few lick examples that can help you memorize those root notes. One is going to be in a major key, the second one is going to be in a minor key, so that we get to memorize both of them. If you want to play the blues scale, there's a simple way to memorize these patterns on the fretboard as well. All we have to do in this case is we add the flat 5 scale degree. If you don't know what the scale degree is, it doesn't really matter for now. I just want you to see the patterns and visualize them if you haven't done that already. And then we'll cover that in a different video. But the important thing here is that there's 2 blue notes that you find placed inside the stack or connected to the stack. And then we add 1 blue note to the rectangle. And as I said before with the pentatonic scales, when you're going to switch from major to minor, it's the exact same shapes that you're using. The only difference is that you have to emphasize a different root note. So you can see the 1 is placed at 2 different places here. Now, one thing that really just bugs me when it comes to other guitar teachers is that a lot of people say that you have to memorize tons and tons and tons of scales, which is definitely not true. And then there's the other camp that says, oh, you don't have to memorize anything. You just have to know a little bit about the root notes. And I don't think any of those camps are true. What's true is that you need to be somewhere in the middle. Yes, you have to memorize some scales. Actually, the more the better. But you don't have to memorize as many as you think you need in order to improvise with confidence and with some level of creative freedom. I know that you probably don't want to become a shred guitarist. I know that a lot of my personal students, they don't want to do that, but at least they want to be able to play melodic licks. And so you can definitely do that if you know these shapes. In order to memorize the stack and the rectangle, I've created 2 exercises here, 2 memorization exercises. I've turned these into licks that you can practice. So here they are. Feel free to click the link in the description to join my free school community. It's completely free, but it's invite only, so I'm going to interview you if you decide to join. Only the people that I feel is a good fit for the group are the people that I will invite and accept. If you have the goal of becoming more confident on the fretboard in 100 days, eliminating all the guesswork when improvising, this might be a good fit. So check it out, and I'll see you there. Cheers.